This is the business of sports.
Sports are the greatest unscripted show on earth.
The next generation of players really grew up with tech and believe in tech.
Your face is your ticket. Your face is your wallet. Your face is your access to a club.
These are such iconic and important buildings for businesses, for fans.
COVID was one of the best things that ever happened to golf.
The NFL is a bulletproof business.
Racing's unique because there is absolutely no reason why we can't compete with the guys.
Come on, is pro pickleball real? Are people really going to tune into this?
If you're playing Moneyball with a huge bag of money, you're going to be really, really good.
Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio.
This is the Bloomberg Business of Sports. We explore the big money issues in the world of sports. I'm Michael Barr. Damian Sassower is off this week. Vanessa Perdomo will be joining us later on in the show. Coming up, we'll talk some golf with the founder of the Big Daddy Celebrity Golf Classic, Rich Big Daddy himself, Salgado. It's an annual golf tournament that brings together celebrities, athletes, and others in partnership with Tunnels to Towers Foundation to raise money and awareness for military families and first responders.
One of the things that's really, really fascinating is that 93 to 95% of every dollar that they raise goes to the charity. I mean, that's unheard of.
Plus, we'll also talk about how the PGA Tour is making its way back to one of President Trump's golf courses for the first time in about a decade. All that is on the way on the Bloomberg Business of Sports. But first, we've seen a lot of players lately get in trouble for betting. And as sports betting continues to grow, it's a problem that is not likely to go away. Bloomberg News global business sports reporter Ira Boudouin has done a lot of reporting on this, and he is here now to break it all down. Ira, welcome back to the Bloomberg Business of Sports.
Thank you.
This is a very serious article, and you wrote it. It's about the leagues are struggling to deal with player prop wagers in sports. And it's very serious because it involves several players, and especially two of them recently with the Cleveland Guardians, the pitchers. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, you've had two pitchers placed on leave.
Right.
First was Luis Ortiz, the starter, and then Emmanuel Clase, the closer. And in the case of Ortiz, it was reported by ESPN that a couple of pitches that he'd thrown had been flagged by one of these monitoring agencies called IC360. They monitor the betting markets for suspicious activity. And they saw that there was some unusual betting, I would assume, on pitches he'd thrown where it was the first pitch of an inning and it was a ball. And you can bet on that, whether the first pitch of an inning will be a ball or a strike. And then we don't know really the details of why Clase was subsequently also placed on leave, but people went digging through his stats and they saw that this year his first pitch of the ninth, when he comes in typically as a closer, has been what they call a waste pitch, which means not close to the strike zone, at a really high rate, unusual for him. And so people were speculating that that's what's going on. We're going to find out. It's an ongoing investigation, but it brings to light a real issue for leagues, which is that when you have these prop bets and when these prop bets are on things as small as a single pitch, it's an increased integrity risk. That's a really tempting and easy thing to throw. It's not the same as like, we're going to lose this game on purpose, right? That's a hard conspiracy to execute. This is one guy. Somebody says to him, hey, just waste your first pitch of the inning. No one will notice. We'll put some money on that. We all make a little bit. No problem. We move on with our lives. But as it turns out, and as I argue in this piece, like players don't realize, I think, that you're going to get caught trying to do that most likely. And the leagues need to figure out what to do about it.
Adam Silver, NBA commissioner, wrote years ago that, listen, we're going to have gambling. It doesn't make a difference where it's going to come from. It's going to happen. So he was a supporter of legalizing online gambling. And then later on, you get the problems with Porter and everything going down. What I wonder now is we're not – and by the way, we're not talking about, okay, is this kicker going to – kick a 50-plus yard field goal or something like that. We're talking about, you can see it if you are really paying attention as a fan. And I just wonder now, why has it taken this long for something like this to catch up?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have seen, you're right. So Adam Silver, that was a sea change, 2014. He said, I'd like to legalize this. Then, and the argument has always been that if this is in the light, people are going to bet. People are going to gamble on sports. If you do it in a regulated market, you have more visibility. The rules basically are that all of these DraftKings, FanDuel, they have to share information about what's going on and flag suspicious things to these groups like IC360 is a company that basically what it does is monitor markets. And they sort of by rule have to talk to the regulators and to the monitors about what's going on in their markets in a way that an offshore book or a corner bookie is not going to do. And so I think the argument is, look, we're catching it now because it's out in the open. We can see into it. And so, yeah, you're hearing about it, but like it's better this than it happening in the shadows and you don't even know until it erupts in a big way.
And the tip-off, you mentioned also, one of several tip-offs was that all of a sudden, and I believe it was Luis Ortiz, all of a sudden you get this action on the bets that, hey, he's going to go outside and this and that, whatever. It's like, well, wait a minute. That didn't make any sense.
That's what usually where it begins. It's not somebody's watching that game and goes, why did Ortiz throw a ball? Because you wouldn't think twice. What happens is somebody's watching the markets, whether that's one of the betting houses, and they go, what the heck? There's so much action on Ortiz first pitch twice now. This has happened. And they might flag it to the monitors and say, hey, we're seeing weird action on this. Or the monitors might sit there and look and go, seeing a lot of bets, a lot of lines are moving strangely for no reason on this or that game that we can discern. There's no injury, there's no weather change, there's nothing that's changed, but suddenly, and that's what their business is. And then they go from there and they unravel if there is something or not. And I think players don't necessarily know. I think the leagues need to do a better job explaining to them that that's happening. That if you're Jonte Porter, you think you're going to get away with this, and that you can, he had gambling debts, he said, when he pled guilty. Like, you could go and pay your debts off easily by just checking out of a game a few minutes early. Why wouldn't you, right? If you know that there's somebody sitting there at a computer who's going to see that action and raise a flag, maybe you don't do it. And so I think I know the leagues are trying, and they have outreach. They post the gambling rules in their clubhouses and locker rooms. They have mandatory sessions where the players have to learn about like the risks and best practices. But I think they need to figure out a way to bring in people to say, here's how we're going to catch you. To bring in players who have gotten caught, say, man, I wish I'd never done this. That was stupid. And to bring in potentially people who are into match fixing and say, here's how I'm going to get my hooks into you, right? Here's how I'm going to kind of get you kind of in my debt, right? And then I'm going to say, hey, you want to settle that up? Just here's a little favor you can do for me. I think that kind of education, now that the gambling is so widespread, is so easy. I think they're going to need to figure out how to educate their players better, or they're going to continue to see events like this that make fans not trust what they're watching.
Now, I'm going to go a little bit off the board here, but this is a story that broke as we were doing this interview. India's government introduced a parliamentary bill to ban online gambling, citing concerns over addiction, financial harm, potential links to money laundering and terrorism financing. And that part, and already it's been established, because they have the poker set up and cricket apps. I mean, my goodness, the fantasy cricket apps are wild. So my question now is, if this passes in India, is this going to be the reverse of online gaming across many countries here, including the U.S.?
Yeah, I mean, the U.S. is an interesting place because it's state by state. Right. The rules are managed at a state by state level. What we have seen is the slowdown of the rollout. Texas, California, these big states that they want to get into those markets, the sports betting operators do, and they haven't yet, right? And I think there's increasing resistance and a desire to stiffen the rules, a bit of a backlash, I would say, happening partly around some of these instances of corruption that we're talking about coming to light. I also think the addiction, right, the social costs are becoming more real. I think now that not only is legalization changing, how easy this is to do, but the smartphone has just put it in your pocket in a way that is, for people who struggle with this kind of thing, is incredibly difficult, right? To not slip into addiction when you've got it in your pocket. You can do it whenever you want. There's always a market on something. And in many cases, the sports books are kind of leading you along. They're saying, hey, here's 500 in free bets. Hey, we noticed you haven't bet in a while. Here, let me give you some extra juice on this or that bet, right? There's a real cost to that. And there's been some interesting research lately in the U.S. about kind of where states that have sports betting versus those that don't, the kind of damage to people's personal finance that's happening. So I do think there's a bit of a reconsideration happening now that, we're 7 years on from the Supreme Court ruling that opened the way for more states to legalize sports betting. I think we're seeing some questions about where do the guardrails need to be, and are they strict enough the way we have them now? I don't think you're going to see a full-on federal prohibition going backwards. That would surprise me.
And I want to expand more on that. I know we're running out of time, but back in the day, if you wanted to place a bet, you had to get dressed. You had to go to the casino. In fact, before you had casinos even pop up, I'm talking about land casinos, you had to go to Vegas or Atlantic City if you wanted to place a bet. Then came the building casinos, and then came online betting. And now you can bet in your pajamas with just a phone. And especially to the younger people out there who are doing this, please, use some common sense, folks, because it's in older people the same way too, because it can destroy you if you don't pay attention.
Yeah, I think you're very right. Good point that you make, that there used to be more friction. You either had to get yourself to a casino, or maybe you had to go talk to a bookie who would, maybe rough you up if you didn't pay. There was some risk. There was things you had to do. There were barriers to doing this. It wasn't just click, click, click. And I think we're finding out that when it's that easy, there's a little bit more of an issue with addiction. So, it's a lot of, I think, interesting questions that regulators are going to have to wrestle with, and leagues are going to have to wrestle with in the years ahead.
Our thanks to Bloomberg News global business sports reporter and friend of the show, Ira Bootway, for joining us. Check out his latest work, Leagues Are Struggling to Deal with a Certain Type of Sports Betting, featuring in Bloomberg Business Week. Up next, we turn to golf and how the PGA Tour is heading back to one of President Trump's courses. I'm Michael Barr. You are listening to the Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio around the world.
This is Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio.
This is the Bloomberg Business of Sports, where we explore the big money issues in the world of sports. I'm Michael Barr, along with Vanessa Perdomo. Damian Sassower is off this week. For the first time in about a decade, President Donald Trump's Miami area golf course will host the PGA Tour in 2026. Bloomberg News wealth reporter Annie Massa has been following this and joins us now to talk about it. Annie, welcome to the Bloomberg Business of Sports.
Thanks for having me.
I can't use the phrase the Doral Open is going to come back because I think it's the Miami Championship. But, old geezers like me remember back in the day when the old Doral Open was from 62 to 2006. Now it's making news again because Donald Trump, who owns the course, he is able now to get the PGA Tour to come back for 2026.
That's right. So the PGA Tour announced that they will return to Trump's Doral Resort in 2026, and this is at the end of a decade-long absence from the course. They used to regularly hold championships there. And it's a big deal because it's yet another mark of it's yet another mark of how different kinds of businesses, both in sports and elsewhere, have warmed to Trump in his second presidency and cozied back up to him, even after long absences or after stepping away.
That was what I wanted to ask you about. What was the reason for this thaw after freezing him out for the 10 years or so?
I mean, one can only guess, but he's in a position of huge power now again. He's the president. And I think that it's important to recognize that after he left office the first time, many businesses kind of kept their distance or dropped him in some way. So the PGA of America was slated to host an event at a Trump property, and they walked that back after the attack at the Capitol. And that was just one type of business that moved away from the Trumps and the Trump organization. We all remember that his social media accounts he was kind of deplatformed. This is something he talks about a lot. So there was a sort of corporate reaction against Trump's in that moment. And so to have the PGA Tour coming to Doral next year, it's a mark of how the PGA is warming back up to him. Also, in the interim, you have Live Golf stepping into the fray. So that's a whole other conversation.
Yes, that brings us to the next point. With Live coming in play, now with this and the PGA, and they're still trying to iron things out, it's like, can't we all get along here? The thing now is, will we see one day I want to clarify this, Doral, where Trump owns, Mr. Trump, will we see Live come play at Doral?
So Live has been hosting in the interim. So since Trump left office, in the interim, Live has been repeatedly hosting its own events at Doral. That was true in April of this year. And it's a big TBD what will happen with Live and the PGA. Trump has at times weighed in on that himself. And it's a question. I don't have the answers to that, unfortunately. But you do have these two different golf leagues that are at odds, obviously, and looking for some kind of marriage, perhaps. Both now coming to the Trump's properties. I should also say the courses are owned by the Trump organization, or the courses are Trump organization properties.
It's interesting there because, like you were saying, Trump has been has backed Live Golf intensely and has been a supporter of Live Golf intensely. I've went to an event for Live Golf that was held in New Jersey. A lot of people were there. A lot of people from both sides were there for different reasons. But Trump was there himself, and he's shown a lot of support for them, which is surprising that the PGA would now decide to thaw this relationship with him, considering how much he's been a supporter of their rival league, Live. It's surprising to me that that hasn't deterred them at all. And does that also, do you think, then show that maybe we don't know what's happening with the emergence of the two, but maybe they're a little bit closer because of this joint relationship that they now will have with the Trump organization?
There's a branding question, I guess, and the appeal of the PGA brand and having the PGA come to a Trump property is probably irresistible for the Trump organization. And it is a different brand. It's a very different kind of brand. Like, it's got this like whole venerable old school vibe versus the more raucous, upset energy of Live. And Live also has the albatross or overhang of the fact that, it's Saudi money backing this. And that's been controversial for its own reasons. Not everyone, something that critics would point out is this is a Saudi-backed league that's really generating a lot of business for when you bring a big event to a Trump property. You generate a lot of business for the property, of course. So, that's where it raised questions of propriety as well.
One of the questions I did have actually was when PGA first stepped back from their relationship and holding events at the Trump properties, how much of that revenue did they take away from the Trump properties?
That is not entirely clear. You can't exactly see that line item broken out on his financial disclosures, but you can just imagine that when you do host the event there are some fees associated with it, but it's really you bring customers to the property. People come and stay in the hotels. It brings in all kinds of money in other ways, like affiliated with the course. It was the black eye really of the PGA of America saying we're not going to hold our event
I want to go back to the Doral Open and why it ended in 2006. It was the Ford Championship at Doral, and the last winner was Tiger Woods in 2006. And then they ran into sponsorship problems, and that was it for the Doral Open. Now that it's the Miami Championship, will we have a problem because President Trump owns that land of getting a sponsorship for maybe going back to the old Doral Open name?
That's such a good question. I mean, the scale of the Trump organization and the companies that want to do business with it across all of these different areas just is staggering. And golf is just one piece, really.
I just wonder, because now you're talking about a man, the president of the United States. What do you run into? Do you run into any problems? If I'm Ford, it's like, okay, well, do I go back and sponsor this again, even though it's owned by President Trump? And that's not, I'm not talking about politics. I'm just talking about, emoluments clauses and all the other stuff and this and that, whatever. It seems like there might be some issues about that, but maybe it can be worked out.
Or maybe it's a selling point. It's a selling point to a sponsor. You don't know. I mean, in Trump's last term, there were several lawsuits related to the emoluments clause and his hotel properties, and those all ended up being dropped, and so it might embolden brands to want to sponsor the event. Who knows?
Yeah, absolutely. In your piece, you cited a text message that Eric Trump had sent saying it was a great honor to be welcomed back to the PGA. I'm curious what his relationship is to the deal in terms of his relationship, like what he oversees for the Trump organization in terms of, like, was he part of bringing the PGA back here? What is his place in that?
Eric Trump now runs the day-to-day business of the Trump organization. When Trump took office, he handed his business over to Eric Trump and Donald Trump Jr. They're both executive vice presidents, but Eric Trump is the one who's kind of the day-to-day leader of the Trump organization. Mm-hmm. But you can't get away from the name that's on the door, I guess,
right?
In terms of brand.
Now, let's blend. I mentioned Tiger Woods earlier, and I should also add that recently, Tiger Woods, he's going to lead a group that could reshape the PGA Tour's competitive model, and he is now part of this board to help reshape PGA Tour events. How much of an impact do you think that will have on the upcoming season with the Doral the tournament and beyond?
That's a good question. I mean, doesn't Tiger Woods have his own relationship to the Trump family?
Well, that's another love connection story. But can they, in terms of golfing in general, though, in terms of the PGA tournament itself, what is it going to take for the PGA to, because right now they are trying to compete with all this money, Saudi money. What is it going to take for them to say, hey, you know what, let's stop this. Let's all get along. Ta-da. What is it going to take?
Well, we know that it's something that Trump cares about personally. Obviously, golf is huge to Trump. Mm-hmm. He loves golf, and it's a big part of his business. And he has weighed in on wanting some kind of resolution between this PGA Tour and Live standoff. So maybe that's one of the peacemaking, endeavors he'd be interested in. Who knows?
Yeah. One of the things, I mean, Trump became a big supporter of Live after he was out of office, after he was out of his first term. So now that he's back in office, has there been criticism about him supporting this league still with all this Saudi-backed money?
Yes. I mean, there's been renewed scrutiny of these relationships, absolutely, since he's been in office. So since that is Saudi money, he's back actively in office. This year, even though Liv had hosted events at Trump properties for several years running after he left office, this year was the first time that Liv hosted at a Trump property while he was sitting president.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes a difference. Mm-hmm. And so that did re-up critiques and questions about the relationship there. I mean, effectively, you have a golf tournament that's financed by Saudi Sovereign Wealth Fund coming and bringing in that attention and that business to a Trump property. Mm-hmm. So it's only one of many of these connections that have really been in the spotlight in his second term.
Our thanks to Bloomberg News wealth reporter Annie Massa for joining us. Up next, we stick with golf and turn to a tournament that raises money and awareness for military families and first responders. For Vanessa, Perdomo, I'm Michael Barr. You're listening to the Bloomberg Business of Sports, Bloomberg Radio around the world.
This is Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio.
Thanks for joining us on the Bloomberg Business of Sports, where we explore the big money issues in the world of sports. I'm Michael Barr, along with Vanessa Perdomo. Damian Sassower off this week. The Big Daddy Celebrity Golf Classic is an annual event that partners with Tunnels to Towers to raise money and awareness for military families and first responders, bringing together celebrities, athletes, and more for that cause. This year's tournament was earlier this month, and here now to talk about it is Big Daddy himself, for the Big Daddy Celebrity Golf Classic founder, Rich Salgado. Rich is also a founder and CEO at Coastal Advisors. Rich, thank you, and welcome to the Bloomberg Business of Sports.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Well, now, there's a lot to talk about here because you are I don't know, let me start this way. You are the founder of the Big Daddy Celebrity Golf Classic. It was held this past Monday.
Yes.
And tell us more about that and what that's all about.
Well, we did leave out that my co-founder and host is Angelika Steen Olsen. So let me make sure I get that straight.
That's right.
Or else, I'll get reminded. But anyway.
That's called a slap on the wrist right there.
Yeah. So we partnered up with Tunnel to Towers, and great foundation. I mean, Frank Siller is, as I say, even though he fights it, he's an American hero, for what he's done. His brother, who tragically died on that day, he's another American hero. And they just go out of their way to make sure that they save, lives and families. When you have these first responders and these former soldiers that, tragically pass away, and, he's paying off mortgages and setting up families for the future. And that whole thing caught me like boom, and being a New Yorker just made me feel like I had to be a part of it. So Angelique and I just jumped in and said, let's do it.
So tell us more about the partnership, how the golf tournament worked with Tunnels to Towers and how it benefited each other.
Well, just to have that brand, be affiliated with them and, be an ambassador to that foundation is, you dream about it, I guess, if that's the way to put it, because, you don't wake up one day and say, hey, I'm going to raise money and who am I doing it for? It's just it's gotta make sense. One of the things that's really, really fascinating is that 93 to 95% of every dollar that they raise goes to the charity. Mm-hmm. That's unheard of.
Yeah.
You can look up their books, you can look at their numbers, there's no lying. It's as plain as day. So that really also, motivated me to open up my Rolodex and go out to my friends and get, these big companies to sponsor and write checks and show up for the golf outing and also for the evening gala.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the biggest things that you are also connected with is insuring athletes, which is something that's a hard thing to do because we see it all the time, every day. whether it's football, whether it's baseball, whether it's hockey, I can just go on. There's always a major injury. How do you assess, as a business model, trying to insure an athlete?
Well, there's, as you said, there's all different marketplaces. You have the 4 sports, and everything is based, like I'll tell an athlete, look, this is not an event, it's a process. I've been doing this for 30 years, and, it's not just insuring athletes for being on the field and off the field. It's also protecting them, with life insurance, estate planning. I mean, now it's even getting more technical with this NIL. You've got kids that are making more money than rookies in the NFL, for instance, in college. And I know because I've already started working on some of them. And when you see these numbers, you're just like, most of these kids in college won't ever see that type of money. And these guys are getting it as freshmen to come to a school. So that's why I think when you hear about the president now saying there's something has to be done because you got, this is getting out of hand because it's, it's who outbids who. Let's say you go to school A and you don't play. Well, you know what? I'm out of here. I'm going to go get money at school B. Right. And it's just going to, and it's really, that's where this is heading right now. But to get back to your question, I think because, our firm is name worthy. It's been recognized all over the place nationally, and people know, like I just did a couple of team visits, and it's, at the NFL camps, and, everyone's like, who's that? Who's that? And then it's like, Big Daddy, Big Daddy, Big Daddy. And it comes from all the way at the top to the bottom. I mean, it goes from a head coach to an assistant coach to a general manager, even to the equipment manager. They know who I am, and I get in front of people, and I don't hard sell anybody. I explain, look, I'm here to help you. I'm here to protect you. I'm not here to ask you for your money. I'm not here to ask you for your family or your autograph or any of those things. I'm here to show you why our firm is a leader in this business.
So when you go to camps, that's mainly what you're going there for? Because I know you've been around the league for a long time. So when you're at those, it's really for your business perspective to be there for the athletes you already protect and to talk to new athletes, or are there other roles you play within your relationships with the NFL?
To answer you answered the question. I'm there to see current, existing, and meet new ones. And then, we were joking around yesterday with one of the guys that I was with, and I said that there's some clients that I've insured for 6-7 years I never met, and one of those was Troy Polamalu, right? So I go to a college Hall of Fame dinner, and I said, hey, Troy, my name is, and I was kind of like, I threw him off because I said, hey, I'm Rich Salgado. Nice to meet you. And he's like, oh, hey, nice to meet you. He goes, you having fun, blah, blah. I said, yeah, I got a couple of clients here, that I'm here to see. And he said, oh, well, like who? And I said, well, I'm Big Daddy. And he was like, what?
So don't use your real name. Yeah. So you insured his hair.
He actually did insure his hair. Yeah. But, it was funny to get the look that I got from him. And then, we hugged, and he was like, hey, man, thank you for because you get referred by agents, financial people. I have the luxury of doing so much interviews like these that get us out there, and people watch and hear and listen. And you get parents that call you. I had one time a client, the wife called me, and she set it up. And, our business, it's grown. I'm here in New York, so I am a New Yorker. And but I have a partner whose name is Chris Muro, and we have an office in Boca. So we've really expanded our reach. And, again, we're just here to do the right thing for everybody.
One of the things I wanted to get back to that you brought up earlier was the NIL aspect of it and how you're working with those players, because you said they're making a lot more money than they've ever. I mean, they're freshmen, they're kids, they're 18 years old. How they're going to understand? And what we've seen also in that space is some of these contracts not going through, kids going to schools and not getting the money that they were guaranteed or they were supposed to get. Is that what you're helping them with, guaranteeing those contracts? Or
no, well, it's become twofold. Like this 2 years ago, you weren't able to insure the the amount of money that the school is giving out. So, for instance, if you're University X and you give me $1 million, you want to insure that $1 million. They weren't doing that. They were only going up to like $250. Now the school is able to insure the money, because if I take the $1 million from you and I jump ship or get hurt, well, you don't want to be out $1 million.
Right.
So, here's the insurance to cover that.
So you're working with the schools.
Yeah, I'm starting to work with the schools. I was just made a school visit about a week ago, and then you have these kids where. So I told the young man, I said, listen, you're getting this money, that's great, but you better get an accountant, because remember, if they give you $1 million, you're not able to spend that whole $1 million.
Right.
You got to put this thing, set up an LLC, do something to protect yourself so you can pay yourself and have, your tax stuff in place so nobody comes after you.
Right.
Because if you spend that whole $1 million, how are you going to pay the tax?
Yeah.
You can't. You're not, unless you have some money that I'm not aware of. And then the old way, or the past way of getting insurance for college kids was, you would come to me and you would go to an underwriter. You didn't have the money to pay. The NCAA had a lending arm and they paid it. And then they paid the premium back to the lender when they got out of school. Well, now that these guys are getting, $500,000, $1 million, the kid's paying the premium direct. And I said, that's a benefit to you, because if someone else pays for it and you collect on the benefit, you get taxed on that benefit.
Right.
Because someone else wrote the check.
Rich Big Daddy Salgado, man. You see, every time I come in this booth, I always have a guest that just makes me smarter. And you just made me smarter 10 times fold. Thank you.
Well, listen, I will be the first one to tell you that I'm not the smartest guy on the planet. That's why I have a great partner in Chris. And, he came up with something, and I'll make you guys laugh real quick. A lot of people say to me, hey, am I big enough to work with you? And I'm like, well, what does that mean? Like, do you have to be way more than me, or be taller than me? What does that mean? And everybody gets like you guys are laughing, right? So my partner came up with something called mytermlife.ai, okay? And we turned this into a fun thing, because we let everyone go on there, and everyone who's listening and watching and whatnot should go on there. And we got tickets to the Jets home opener and the Giants home opener.
Oh.
And I let everyone sign up for it, and we're going to have, what's the word? We'll pick a winner for both games. And at the same time, at no cost, you can look up insurance for yourself and see what it costs. So we obviously take care of two things with one screen.
Yeah.
Real quickly, I know we're out of time, but I'm going to ask this. Jets or Giants, man, how far are they going to go?
I like both, and I have a vested interest in both, so I've got to be politically correct. So I love both teams.
Our thanks to Rich Big Daddy Salgado for joining us. He's founder and CEO at Coastal Advisors and founder of the Big Daddy Celebrity Golf Classic. That does it for this edition of the Bloomberg Business of Sports. For Vanessa Perdomo, I'm Michael Barr. Tune in again next week for the latest on the stories moving big old money in the world of sports. And don't forget to catch our podcast on all your podcast platforms. You're listening to the Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio around the world.